I asked some fellow modelers to roast my Sherman tank diorama, and unfortunately, they had some good points. A little bit of constructive criticism can really keep that pride in check and keep us focused on sharpening our skills. So when I was at 2 different recent shows, I asked some judges and builders about how I could improve my diorama. Then I took what I wanted, left the rest, and fixed what I could. Since I made this diorama before YouTube, I first want to introduce you to this story build. The original idea was set in the last months of World War II in Hamburg, Germany. A Sherman tank crew stopped to take a rest and conduct minor repairs. They were resupplying their ammo and rations, but there was a looming threat just around the corner, a dreaded Tiger tank. But that story never quite materialized. Due to a drastic underestimation of the time needed and the approaching deadline of a competition, I made a decision to cut this story in half. The massive corner building was downgraded to a simple apartment facade with 3D printed window frames designed in Tinkercad, and the XPS foam base was left with this odd asymmetrical shape that unexpectedly directs vision, focusing attention where it would most matter. The stowage-packed 1/35th scale Tamiya EZ8 Sherman at the center got the typical treatment of airbrushed acrylics, oil paint dot filters, and was finished with pigments. At center, we have the Tamiya tank crew commander intently focused on a map, with 2 Army scout figures crowded around him. The scout figure is intensely talking into his radio, reporting important information that he just received from the tank commander about their last battle. The meticulous mechanic is checking the battered, muddy suspension, with his tools carefully laid out on a blanket. The remaining 3 crewmen are passing supplies from a stack on the ground to their claustrophobic home inside of the tank. This crew isn't charging into battle. They're waiting, repairing, resupplying, existing beside this machine they've cursed in, bled in, and fought for their lives in for months on end. But storytelling only works if the illusion holds together. And once other builders started pointing out the cracks in that illusion, I started seeing them everywhere. The first few things that were pointed out to me were basic construction flaws on the Sherman itself. The taillights, they weren't painted red. While they shouldn't be bright ruby red of car taillights, they definitely weren't meant to be olive drab. Then there was the barrel. The seam lines were showing so bad. And even on the backside, where I thought nobody would ever look, 2 of the Sherman's road wheels were crooked. That I didn't even notice until it was pointed out. Worst of all, there was a gigantic glob of glue showing from underneath the tracks. The base got a fair amount of heat too. People pointed out that the edges were jagged, needed more paint, and that the rear facade needed cleanup. Despite those imperfections, there is a whole lot I like about this build. I love the way the figures came out and how their interactions with each other all make sense and support the story, as well as the brick facade. I was truly proud of how well that foam carving and painting came out. I was also happy with all the subtle variation and weathering of the tank stowage and the supply pile. So I got the diorama on the workbench and fixed what I could. I set the goal to paint the taillights, cover up the glue spot, and clean up the edges and the back of the base. Fixing that barrel would have required a teardown that would have probably ended up damaging more than it would fix, so I skipped that. And even though some people didn't like the shape of the base, I loved it, so I kept that. I set to work using some Vallejo paints to color the lights and paint the base, and I used Vallejo pigments paired with AK enamel thinner to cover up that unsightly glue spot and generally blend the groundwork together a little better. I think a lot of us want encouragement more than criticism, and encouragement matters, but if all people ever do is praise our work, eventually we stop improving. And sometimes the kindest thing someone can do is be honest, even though that honesty might be hard to hear. Who's the better friend? The one who lets you walk into a job interview with a booger hanging out of your nose because they didn't want to embarrass you? Or the one that quietly points it out? I want the friend that will tell me when I stumbled and missed the mark, especially when I don't even realize it. Good constructive criticism works the same way. The builders who helped me improve this piece weren't trying to tear it down. They cared enough to point out what I couldn't see. I will always want that, and I will always search it out. In the end, it makes me better and gives my builds more meaning. With everything fixed and as good as it could be, I stood back and looked at the finished product. Some simple cleaning up and a stronger framing of the edges made it pop just a little bit more. But more than that, I knew that this piece was now as good as I could make it. And from there, I could move on with valuable lessons to carry into my next build. That's it for this one, but always remember, Don't just build models, build stories.